session. And if you do have questions, we ask that you write them in. And you could do this throughout the webinar. You don't have to wait until the end, and we'll keep track of those questions that come in. And if for some reason during the duration of this broadcast we cannot get to all of your questions, we will certainly get back to you and follow up personally after the broadcast. So thank you very much for attending. I'd like to introduce myself, Allie Knairi from Henkel. I'm the Global Medical Market Development Manager within the organization. And I am with Elizabeth, who is going to be managing the webinar broadcast and the questions at the end. And also want to make two acknowledgments. Herman Handwerker, our Henkel Medical Global Engineer, who supported a lot of the content that you'll see in this presentation. He will be on the line as well. And Thomas from GLS Poly 1. Who also was very instrumental in putting together the data that we're going to be sharing with you today. And Thomas will be a participant in the presentation covering a certain section of the slides. So thank you very much, and I'm going to turn it over to Judy from Ellsworth, who set this program up.
Thank you, Allie, and welcome to our guest. My name is Judy Allen. I'm the Marketing and Business Development Manager at Ellsworth Adhesives. Thank you again for your time today. Just a quick brief overview on Ellsworth Adhesives. We've been in business for over 40 years, and we specialize in the distribution of adhesive-related products, especially chemicals and equipment. Our headquarters is located in Germantown, Wisconsin. We have stocking locations throughout the United States, Canada, and Mexico, as well as other stocking locations globally. We offer an extensive product line including cyanoacrylate, epoxy, light cure, silicone, and urethane adhesives, as well as single and multi-component dispensing, robotic dispensing, and UV cure equipment. We are an ISO 9001 AS9120A registered company, and we partner with major manufacturers like Henkel, Loctite to provide medical device adhesives that are tested to ISO 10993 biocompatibility standards. So as a global corporation, we excel at the logistics of supplying our products accurately and on time, whether it's to a single location or many locations throughout the world. We also offer a wide variety of value-added services, and through these services, we help our customers to fulfill all their adhesive needs, whether it's from the initial technical advice or through customized product fulfillment such as labeling and documentation, which is so important in the medical industry, or through some of our unique inventory programs. We really strive to help our customers achieve maximum productivity with lower cost in their manufacturing processes by offering these value-added services and solutions and delivering quality products. We really understand the unique challenges of medical device design and manufacturers. We have over 50 engineering sales representatives in North America and more than 100 globally. Many of them have years of experience in problem solving and implementing adhesive solutions in the medical device manufacturing environment. Our highly experienced engineering sales representatives provide ideas on how to streamline processes and eliminate duplication of products. And our technical expertise also aids in recommending new production methods such as state-of-the-art dispensing, custom packaging, and we really strive to ensure worker safety through proper handling of these products. So again, thank you to Loctite, Henkel Loctite, for providing this opportunity to share with you today this informational webcast. Thank you again to all of our attendees for their time. And at this time, I'll turn it back over to Allie. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Judy. So we'll begin with the agenda, and I wanted to let all of you know that our intent here in this presentation is not to explain, okay, yes, you need to get rid of PVC in the medical disposable market and share with you all the reasons why. The true intent of this presentation is for all of you to come away with the comfort knowing that if your organization is faced with the challenge of having to change your materials from PVC to another alternative material, we would like you to come away with the comfort knowing that there are options out there, what they are, and how you can incorporate them into your design. So we'll begin with the materials of concern and how we got to this place. What are the alternative materials out there that you could be looking towards? And then finally, what are some of the assembly solutions with those alternative materials? So, you know, why are we talking about this now? I think most of you on the phone, if you've been involved in the medical device industry or any industry, there's been a lot of talk of various materials in the marketplace that would be materials of concern. So there's guidances by the FDA, there's the media. You know, if you were paying attention in 2010, the big BPA scare with baby bottles, there's even materials of concern within REACH due to that. So there's a lot of things in the marketplace that would possibly point to, you know, moving away from these materials, and that's been around for quite some time. Me personally, I would point to, I think that big media swell in 2010 around BPA that really got the medical industry opening their eyes, and specifically the FDA, to, okay, what could that mean for some other materials, and, you know, how should we be addressing this? So for today's talk, as it's titled, we're looking at the PVC, and there was a specific guidance put out by the FDA, again, just a guidance, no regulation. And it does explain in this guidance that specifically with DEHP, which is the plasticizer in PVC, that is what's of concern. And as most of you are probably aware, there is no true evidence that there's long-term effects on the human body. Really, it's just experimentation done in the lab, so there is no true evidence or no human studies that are done. With that said, it's still a concern that they're bringing up, and they tend to specifically bring up the concern for a small subset of the population that might be affected. Specifically, they call out the NICU, so devices that would be in the NICU for infants and the young population. This guidance also calls out what specific devices that they would be more concerned with having the DEHP PVC in those devices. So you'll see on the slide here things like IV with catheters and cannula, bags that are either storing or transporting drugs or bodily fluids, and then of course the tubing that's associated with that. So in this realm, these are the specific devices that they're calling out of most concern to them and therefore to the patients. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Tom, who's going to discuss what are some of the alternatives out there, and starting with the PVC in the marketplace today.
Thank you, Allie. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. Again, Tom Hemler with PolyOne GLS, the Global Industry Manager for Healthcare. And just have 3 slides here, and you know, the focus of this the webinar is going to be on the adhesive side. So let's just talk quickly about where we are today as far as benefits of PVC, and then considerations why you might consider going in a different direction. And I'm just going to do a quick summary of the solutions that we have developed and have positioned into the market. So the whole movement or focus attention on PVC use in healthcare, whether it's in packaging, farm packaging, infusion delivery, etc., really got rolling, in my view, in the early 2000s, when the concerns about the DEHP plasticizer that was primarily used throughout flexible PVC came out, and that ended up transitioning into just an overall concern on using PVC. PVC has been used in healthcare greater than 40 years. It's well established and well understood. So there's a lot of arguments in either case regarding whether you should use it or shouldn't. But the benefits Obviously, a great global manufacturing economy of scale, very low, decent low cost. It's flexible, it's resistant to breakage, it's reasonably transparent. It's got a lot of history, which in the healthcare market is important. And in some specific applications, the DEHP plasticizer has shown to actually have some positive benefits. So where we are today as far as considerations, I think that Ali had mentioned, there really isn't any credible study showing human health effects from using just PVC. The health effects were regarding the DEHP plasticizer, and as I understand it, for the most part, DEHP has been removed and substituted with any one of 3 different technologies, DOA, TOTM, or citrates. So the human health aspect of vinyl, I believe, has been addressed in most applications. So really now the focus on those drivers that are still looking at PVC alternatives are more around the environmental impact. If over in Europe they use incineration frequently to dispose of medical waste, and there are toxins produced in the incineration processing, there's potential concerns for leaching of plasticizers, whether it's DEHP or any of the alternatives, when they're in landfills. PVC, flexible PVC, is very difficult to recycle. I am not aware of any successful recycling efforts when it comes to hospital waste. And typically the PVCs have a pretty high weight percentage of plasticizer used, whether it's DEHP or one of those alternatives. So next slide, please. So in response to this need, which we started really learning about and getting a sense of in around 2005, 2007 timeframe, Poly1GLS developed a line of materials to provide options to the healthcare industry. And the first 3 grades were subject of a lot of the testing that we did with Henkel. And these are standard grades that are designed as styrenic block copolymer TPEs that don't use any plasticizer whatsoever. So they are fairly simple polymer matrices. All of them are certified for USB Class 6 and ISO 10993-4 and 5. Very, very low extractability profiles. A lot of that is because they're using no plasticizers at all. Although we didn't do the testing, we have multiple applications in the market that also meet 10993-10. And these materials, depending on the application, are sterilizable by most techniques. In the event of gamma and E-beam, depending on the color shift requirements, there may be a need for some colorant additions there to not affect the aesthetics of the materials. And then the last 2 on this list are specifically targeting the biopharm and the pharmaceutical processing industry that still use quite a bit of autoclaving, so they have very high temperature resistance. Those materials are plasticized, but they are plasticized with FDA grade mineral oil, so they are still very simple systems. And then go ahead to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. Oh, there we go. And then a second series that originally were designed for blow molded pharmaceutical containers like IV bottles and also films, but these materials have also found application in tubing and IV drip chambers as well. These are on the harder side of the Shore A range, and they carry all the same compliance and characteristics that the tubing materials carried as well. So these are gaining some traction. It seems to be dependent on region of the world. There seems right now to be a little bit more interest in Europe, and in the U.S. on the West Coast, a more environmentally friendly region of the world. And over in Asia, the verdict is out. There's interest in some cases. In other cases, there is not. So it it depends regionally and specific types of applications how much of a driver that we're seeing for these solutions. To transition into the next part where we're going to talk about bonding of these materials, let me mention that a lot of applications that we're working on, particularly on the infusion and blood collection side, have installed manufacturing assembly operations that typically use solvent bonding, and using TPEs and solvent bonding definitely provides some challenges given the material nature of TPEs versus PVCs, and this is where the Henkel adhesives came in there to fill the gap. So with that, I will turn it back over to Allie. And look forward to answering any questions at the tail end.
Thanks. So as Tom stated, primarily the method of choice and the method that's been tried and true for many, many years is solvent welding or solvent bonding. And for good reason. It's a very low cost material that in of itself. There's no additional material in the assembly to worry about looking for or assessing if that material is leaching, because the solvent will evaporate and be dismissed from the bond line, and typically always result in a pretty high bond strength with especially tubing assemblies. As far as considerations go, depending on the choice of the organization and the organization's culture, they may choose to eliminate solvents from assembly due to the health and safety considerations. So sometimes that can be a factor depending on the organization. As Tom mentioned, it becomes challenging to use solvents when you're looking at dissimilar materials. There certainly are some solutions out there and ways to get around it, but as you start to try to assemble dissimilar materials or even some of these new alternatives, it can become difficult. The solvent prior to evaporating off the part could cause stress cracking that may require you to anneal the parts, or it could be seen further down the line in causing failures of the joint. The upfront joint design is critical. Most often with solvents, you need a very, very tight gap, either slip fit or press fit. And in some cases, there can be a long evaporation time in your process, so you might have to hold parts to go to the next step until that is complete. So looking at adhesives, where they might be contrary to the solvents, you can join dissimilar materials depending on the adhesive technology that you select. There are many, many different materials that you can assemble. The adhesive itself can be flexible or rigid, aiding in a little bit more freedom on the design that you have, as well as performance, depending on how that device might be conditioned or used in the marketplace. Adhesives, unlike solvents, will fill gaps. So you, again, have a little more design freedom on the joint in which you're assembling. Quick testability. With most adhesives, you can test them immediately, so that in this realm would look like possibly doing a pull or leak test immediately in line. Also with considering quality inspection, most of the adhesive technologies do have detection capabilities like fluorescence, so that you could see did the adhesive get on the part and did it get in the entire area of the part. So in the case of a tubing and connector joint, did it go all the way around 360 degrees? And very adaptable to your process, and we're going to highlight that as we move into the data. And then lastly, for considerations of adhesives, depending on the technology, you could require equipment to cure the adhesive. Again, depending on the technology, you could have low peel strength, and again, depending on the technology, there could be low temperature resistance. Most of those considerations can be managed by the selection of the technology that you go with. And unlike solvents, the adhesive is an additional material that you would have to assess of whether or not there's any leachables. So in this section, we're now going to look at the testing that we did with the materials Tom mentioned and how the adhesives have performed with them. Adhesives in general has a long history of assembly solutions for the traditional materials. So the materials like PVC with DEHP, even polycarbonate with BPA. So adhesives do have a long history with those traditional materials. So in this next section, what we hope to cover for you is to highlight the compatibility with these alternative materials and to also showcase how versatile the adhesives are with the different design and process needs that you might have. So let's start with reviewing the testing details, so how we tested and what we tested. So first we're going to start with what we tested. The components that we used, as Tom mentioned, two of the VersaFlex HC and CLE series materials. We also sourced from Cucina a non-DEHP PVC to include in the testing. The connectors were both PVC materials and one a Y connector where the tubing is inserted into the ID, and then one female connector where we use the same tubing to insert onto the OD of the connector. So now we're going to discuss how we tested. So the testing protocol that we used across the board on the next few slides that you'll see, we assembled the parts as received, and the assemblies were pulled as shown below. That pull force causes a shear stress on the joint, and I have an asterisk listed there because depending on the diameter of the tubing, so a more rigid tubing would certainly be in the shear stress mode. As you get to a more flexible tubing and change in the diameter, now you might be introducing the peel mode of stress on your joint, and that's due to the tubing necking and flexing as you're pulling it, which is causing a different stress on the joint. So for the most part, we're saying conservatively it's the shear mode of stress, but as you'll see with the varying diameters of the tubing, you'll see different results as you're introducing that peel. In the process variables that we wanted to adjust, again, to show the versatility of the adhesive, are the adhesive amount used on the assembly, what application method, the gap size. So we altered the gap size for one test, and I do have in bold the 2000th gap, because if we weren't adjusting the gap, you could be assured the other data is with the 2000th gap, which is similar to a slip fit. The bond overlap, again, we varied that, but you'll see in bold the 0.44 inches is what was used for the majority of the testing, unless we notify. The connector edge style and a male versus female joint. So those are the adjustments that we made. So each of the next slides will address each of those adjustments. So first, we're starting off with the adhesive amount. So we varied by 1, 2, and 3 free-falling drops of adhesive onto the tubing, and then inserted that into the connector. So you'll see the adhesive products that we selected. One light care product, which is the 3922, and we have 2 cyanoacrylate, or in layman's terms, instant adhesives, represented by 4902 and 4011. So you'll see, based on this testing, that the ideal drop size we selected was 2, but you'll note that there isn't a huge difference in the results, you know, based on the adhesive amount size. You'll note that as we get into adjusting the gap, that's where adhesive amount can be a cause for differing results. But here you could be pretty confident that adjusting the drop size didn't have too much of an effect, and so from here out we selected 2 drops on the assembly. So the next factor that we wanted to look at was application method, knowing that if your organization is faced with a change to change materials, that could also mean that you have to change your assembly process. So we wanted to highlight that adhesives are very adaptable to whatever given process you might have or whatever given process you might be forced to change into. So we did 2 application methods by pre-applying the adhesive. So again, the 2 free-falling drops onto the OD of the tubing and then inserting in. We then also mimicked wiping the adhesive on the OD of the tubing in a wide band. And then lastly, we tried post-apply. So in this case, your assembly is put together and then you could post-apply the adhesive, which is, in other terms, wicking it into the joint. So you'll see here again that there is not a huge change in your strengths depending on the application method. So next we're going to look at gap. So in this case we altered the connector that we listed that we were using. So we altered the ID of that connector. We still maintained 2 drops of adhesive for this testing. And again, the adhesive applied to the OD of the tubing. So you'll also see in this case that there isn't a huge effect with the variation in gap. I will note that once we got to the largest gap listed, 0.033 inches, in that case you'll see in some of the data it's starting to drop off. We did do some experiments in this case with 3 drops of adhesive, and then we were back to the standard or starting strength that we had with the smaller gap size. So the next thing we wanted to look at was the overlap. So how far is the tubing being inserted into the connector? As I had mentioned, for all the testing prior to this, it was the 0.44 inch overlap where the tube was inserted all the way to the end. So for this series of testing, we adjusted that back to make a smaller overlap, still using the 2 drops of adhesive in the standard slip fit gap. And you'll see here that there wasn't a huge change or effect based on the overlap, you know, on the testing that we have here. And next, we took a look at the connector edge. So as you might have seen in a lot of connectors, there could be a chamfer on the leading edge, which is a tapered angle on the ID of that connector. So we wanted to see what would the results look like with and without that chamfer. So we removed it for the data that says without, and we kept it for the data that has it within. And you'll see again there's a minimal difference on the results with and without the chamfer. And then lastly, we wanted to take a look at what if we had an assembly in which the tube was inserted onto the OD of the connector. In most cases, the most challenging bond is what we've done up until this point on all the data, which is the tube inserted into the ID of the connector. So we wanted to see, you know, would you gain or improve your strength with a different joint design. And you could see in this case that we did see improved bond strength for assemblies to the OD of the connector. So highlighting here that you do have options for increasing your bond strength, such as things like joint design. And of course, with adhesives, there's always many different alterations and variations that you can make in order to increase your bond strength. So before we close, I just wanted to mention that Tom had talked about some of the applications in which he's seeing an increased request or desire for the TPEs, and one of those is in infusion. And typically for those applications, they're looking for around 5 pounds of bond strength, ideally 8 to be above that threshold. So for all the data that we presented here today, you'll note that the majority of the materials achieve at least that 5 to 8 pounds of strength, if not much greater. So for the most part, all the strength data is within the range of where these applications would need to be. So in closing on the presentation, we just wanted to leave you with a few key takeaways. Like I mentioned at the offset, we are not here to say, you know, you must change your PVC material. We truly wanted you to go away with a comfort that if your organization, for whatever reason, if it's sustainability initiatives, if it's your sales and marketing teams that are saying, you know, we're not competitive with the hospitals, you know, by having these materials in our devices, if it's your health and safety team that's saying, hey, you know, we need to get rid of these materials, whatever the reason might be that you're confronted with having to make a change, we wanted to provide you with some information and comfort knowing that there are options out there. So overall, TPEs are definitely a viable alternative with a good development of history within, as Tom mentioned, the infusion and pharmaceutical packaging applications. And then we also wanted to leave you with the understanding that adhesives are very adaptable to your materials, design, and process needs, knowing that change is not looked upon pleasantly within the medical industry, knowing that an adhesive would be adaptable to whatever existing process you might have in place was something that we wanted you to walk away with, and knowing that you're achieving that required strength that I mentioned for certain applications. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Judy. And again, thank you for your time.
Thank you again, Allie. So listed on this slide is our contact information. Should you be interested in contacting anyone at Ellsworth Adhesives or Henkel Loctite. And thank you again, everyone. At this time, we will take any questions you have, and I'll turn it back over to Allie and Liz to field those questions. Thank you.
So everyone, please use the right-hand portal, the GoToWebinar platform, to type in your questions, and we will ask those accordingly. We have a couple of questions that came throughout the presentation. So Tom, I think this one is addressed to you. What factors are limiting PVC replacement?
Yeah, and I something that we've been studying, because the technology that we developed has been out in the market 10, almost 15 years. And one of the things that we are hearing consistently from the market is the economics at the hospital level are very challenging right now. And because the TPE alternatives are newer technologies and not nearly as mass scale produced as PVCs, there is a bit of a cost consequence. So that is one of the really big factors, and one of the other ones that we're seeing is lack of regulation that is pushing the healthcare suppliers to convert out. So they are focusing their energies on other higher ROI activities at this point in time, because they're not really being pushed, you know, on a regulatory basis. But I'm curious to anybody in the audience that has any take on that. Would appreciate any feedback.
Thanks, Tom. Another question that came through: do you have experience and good data for joining the new TPE tubing to other connector materials, and if so, what materials? Allie?
Sure, thanks for the question. The answer to that is yes. The study that we're doing on these TPE materials is going to be broadened out to more materials. We have already done testing so far with polycarbonate, ABS, and even a product out there in the market that's specifically going after the polycarbonate with BPA, so that would be the Triton material from Eastman. So we've done some testing with their connectors as well. And as we get that data collected, we plan on publishing that as well with those other materials. So also just to comment, this was meant as an initial examination of how the adhesives are working with these materials. We do intend to continue our test program to do things like the other connector materials, but also conditioning the parts, so flexing the joints. Right now, if you were to go on Ellsworth's website, they do have a video of our product 4902 with the same PVC tubing and PVC connector and twisting it in a lathe, just so you could see an extreme condition of how flexible the adhesive would need to be in order to withstand any flexing and end use. The other types of conditioning that we intend to do are heat aging to simulate the shelf life testing that you need to do on your devices, and also sterilization resistance.
Thanks, Allie. Another question that came through, and Allie, I think this is for you. How easy is it to go from a solvent assembly process to an adhesive assembly process?
Okay, a good question. So if you have an existing process that's utilizing solvent, it would depend on, if it's a manual process versus semi-automated to fully automated. And with an adhesive solution, all of our adhesives are meant to work in any of those scenarios, so from manual to fully automated. Depending on the technology, I'm a little bit familiar with some of the manual and automated equipment with solvents. Typically that's using bushing type style dispenser where the solvent is recirculating around. A lot of our adhesive technologies are compatible with that, like the light cure acrylics. The cyanoacrylates, however, are not compatible with that type of equipment, so it would be a matter of either modifying that existing equipment to work if the cyanoacrylate was the adhesive of choice, or switching out that dispense mechanism to a different style that would be more compatible with the cyanoacrylate.
Thanks, Allie. Another question, Tom, that came through that is directed towards you. Are there certain applications that have a stronger driver than others?
So yes, we have seen in the last couple of years infusion applications related to the neonatal market have had a much stronger push towards elimination of PVC-free, and I think the benefit of our technology is there is no plasticizers used in the material at all, and they have an extremely clean extraction profile. And we are also seeing a lot of interest on the infusion pump side, peristaltic and positive displacement type of infusion pumps that are typically using PVC and in some cases silicone. There has been a lot of interest in converting into a PVC-free alternative. And then, as I think I mentioned just previously, in general, the European market seems to be more keen on eliminating the use of PVC, and we're seeing a lot more activity there than we are in North America and Asia.
Thanks, Tom. Another question that came through that is for you. Did you do any heat humidity evaluations of the new tubing types?
So we have typically will partner up with an extrusion partner. Our expertise is material science, and we typically bring the expertise of a tubing extruder in to help do these these beta tests. So I am aware of some testing that was done when the materials were initially developed, and I'm not aware of any hydrolytic related stability issues. when it comes to thermal aging. I think Ali had mentioned this, that sometimes has an impact on solvent bonding, and the Henkel adhesives appear to be a better solution that stand up to that thermal aging experimentation. So I hope that answers the question completely.
Thanks, Tom. Another question that came through is VersaFlex available as a raw material or only tubing?
Okay, so and my apologies for not making this clearer. So these are resin materials that are readily available on the market, you know, typically sold to captive OEMs that do their own extrusion and or third-party extruders that produce tubes and supply them into the market. And let me also point out that while I showed a grand total of 7 core grades, what GLS does very effectively is customize. So our approach is to have a basic portfolio that covers the majority of the market needs, and then depending on the specific customer requirements, and particularly when you're trying to convert out of PVC, you're typically trying to limit the changes you're making in the design of that overall assembly. So if you have a hub connector that's polypropylene at a certain inner diameter, and you have a PMMA lure connector on the other end, you know, you're looking for a material that's going to drop in as a replacement without making changes on the other component. So what we do well is customize off of that core. So, you know, if you needed a 67 or a 68 Shore, you needed a certain surface feel after extrusion. Maybe you're looking for a very hydrophilic versus a hydrophobic internal surface. You need a special coloring. That's the kind of thing that GLS does very effectively in tweaking material to meet specific requirements.
Thanks, Tom. At this time, I don't see any other questions, so if anybody has any other questions, please enter them now through the portal. Okay, if we do not have any other questions, we will conclude our webinar today. We wanted to just thank everyone for attending the Ellsworth Henkel Loctite Medical Adhesive webinar this morning. And if you guys have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to Ellsworth or Henkel Loctite. Thank you again for your time.